In 2019, YouTube was caught violating the Child Online Privacy Protection Act, or COPPA. Since settling, YouTube has enacted new policies that are meant to serve as a smokescreen so they can dodge responsibility and scapegoat creators. As such, for my own protection, it is my obligation to advise you that this video is not aimed at children. My target audience is not children. Parental discretion is advised. Hey guys, how's everyone doing? This is Sir Jedi Sentinel, and welcome back to Sentinel Reviews. We're getting close to the end here. 3 stories left. Next up, in Dark Shadows, the Quentin Collins collection, The Haunted Refrain, released in January of 2013. Written by Aaron Lamont, directed by Jim Pearson. The Haunted Refrain stars David Selby and Karen Jean Olds. As always, I will be talking spoilers, so in the description box below, you will find the link to Big Finish's website where you can buy The Haunted Refrain, or, like me, get it as part of the Quentin Collins Collection digital bundle. And I'm really happy this story is good as it is, especially after the last 2 stories, The Creeping Fog and Operation Victor, were lackluster. They weren't bad. I didn't think they were actually bad. I just found them lackluster. Yeah, that's a good word for it. So the plot of The Haunted Refrain is that newlywed couple, Grant and Barbara Douglas, move into a house in Portland, Maine. And as they explore the house, Barbara finds an old gramophone. Now, what's really interesting about The Haunted Refrain is that from here on out, the format of the stories have kind of changed a little bit. Panic is a bit of a return to form, but we'll talk about that when we get to Panic. So in this story, and the next one for that matter, Quentin is not the lead player. He's still important, he's still pivotal, there's still a focus on him, but he's not the lead like he was in the previous 5 stories. And that's something that will go on in the next story, and again, will change when we get back to Panic. But so, and what I really like about The Haunted Refrain is it's kind of a play on the haunted house story, but not really. But it plays with some of the tropes of haunted house stories. For example, usually one of the premises of a haunted house story is that the family moving into said haunted house is broken in some way. The husband cheated on his wife, the kids going through problems, whatever, it's a broken family, and it's only through facing the ordeal of the haunted house that strengthens the family and brings them together. And like I said, this story kind of plays on that premise, but it's not exactly that. For one thing, it's not a haunted house story, but also Grant and Barbara are not broken. They very clearly love each other. Their relationship is incredibly strong. Actually, I do want to just bring attention to a little kerfuffle that happened with this story behind the scenes. Originally, Grant was supposed to be played by Andrew Collins, the actor who played Barnabas for Big Finish. But when Big Finish started editing, they found half of the Andrew Collins's recording missing. Like it was corrupted or something. I'm working on limited details here. So the problem is that when they tried to get Andrew Collins back, the studio where he recorded had shut down and gone out of business. So, basically 11th hour, Jonathan Marks stepped in to re-record all of Grant's lines and dialogue. And, despite that, he is really good. It does feel very organic. You would never know that there was an issue with the recording. I didn't even know until I looked up this story for this review. Now, as the lead, and I'll talk about Grant a little bit later as I go through the story. But, as she's cleaning out the house, Barbara starts playing the gramophone. And then she hears Quentin's voice on it. And as the story develops, we learn that Quentin is trapped in the gramophone. And that's where the story really starts to get interesting because, Barbara learns that, after she does the whole, oh, this can't be real, I'm just imagining this, after she goes through that whole shtick and starts to believe it's real, Quentin explains that he was trapped on the gramophone Not going to talk about how. You'll just have to wait for that. But that every time a record is that, he doesn't want the gramophone to not be played because he hates just existing in nothingness, as he essentially says. But he also says that each time a record plays, he loses his memories, he loses parts of himself. And, as the story goes on, Barbara continues to come to the attic and play the gramophone and begins to sort of lose herself to Quentin's stories and develops a bond with him, to the point that she starts neglecting her duties. She forgets to make her husband dinner, she hates going out with him. There's one point where he takes her to a cocktail party with all his work colleagues, and she just resents being there. It reaches a point where she kind of resents her life. And, as the lead, Karen Jean Olds absolutely carries this story. She's particular, portraying a wide gamut of emotions, from happy and content, frightened, curious, all the different points in the story. And, the relationship with Quentin that develops feels very natural. It doesn't feel like a force. It doesn't feel forced. And it never truly feels romantic. Like, she believes she falls in love with Quentin, but, she still shows this dedication to her husband, which is admirable, and what's the good word for it? Is also very kind of complex. And another thing I like is that as Barbara loses herself to spending time with Quentin, I like that this story, because weaker stories absolutely would have done this. We all know it. I like that this story doesn't vilify Grant to justify Barbara spending time with Quentin. The few instances we get Grant, we see with Grant leading up to the climax, he very dearly loves his wife, and he's very concerned. Sure, he's a little angry that things aren't going right, but he doesn't know what's going on with Barbara. He's very concerned. And, like I said, I like that the story doesn't paint him as a villain or a prick just to justify Barbara spending so much time with Quentin. Another part where this story shines is the sound design. The sound design for this is absolutely brilliant, especially with the gramophone itself. Wow, I just blanked hard. I am so sorry about that. But for example, sometimes when a record skips, Quentin will start skipping himself. Like, he'll start repeating a word over and over. And the sound design, and the music for that matter, really helps to illustrate that this is not a good thing happening. And that's one thing too I like about this. The music plays such an integral part to this. Like, it does a really good job of conveying the mood you're supposed to feel. When it's tense, you're supposed to feel scared. And it's very successful at what it does. Excuse me again. Where do I want to go from that? Because obviously I'm going to have to talk about the ending, which is just horrifying. But I'm trying to see if there's anything else before I want to get there. Let's see, I talked about the music. Oh, the music. So if you pay attention, and I'm still trying to work out everything, but every time Barbara plays a record, and most of the time she plays one of two records. One is Shadows of the Night, Quentin's theme. The other is a song. I don't think it's pre-existing. I think it was written for this story. But if you try to block out the dialogue and the plot and listen to the lyrics of this song, it feels like they're hinting at what's happening at the story. It's really unsettling, and it's really well done. Like everything else in this story. And then the climax is something else. So it's reached a point where, as Quentin loses himself, Barbara decides to start writing down Quentin's stories and documenting them, sort of writing them as a memoir. And then it reaches a point where I've been talking a while. It reaches a point where, Quentin realizes whatever else is on the gramophone with him is going to try and come after Barbara. So he tells Barbara to shut off the gramophone and never come back. One day Barbara comes home, and Grant has actually come home ahead of her and has found Quentin's memoir, which leads to this really well handled confrontation where he's drunk, accusing Barbara of being unfaithful to him, being in love with another man, and a fight breaks out, during which Barbara accidentally kills Grant before Barbara herself is pulled into the record, which is why Quentin wanted her to stop playing the records, because he eventually realized that the only way he could escape was to make someone take his place. And unfortunately, through the accident of her husband playing it, Grant has caused just that. Grant is dead, and and Quentin is free, and Barbara is trapped in the record. Quentin has no idea who he is at this point, and so he assumes the identity of Grant Douglas before deciding to go to Collinwood with amnesia, which ties into TV stuff. So I'm going to kind of stop there, except for the ending. The Dark Shadows theme starts playing, and then it cuts off to Barbara begging for Quentin's help on the record, ending on a really unsettling note. The Haunted Refrain is just really good. Three great performances from our leads, a really good, tense atmosphere with great music and sound design. And like London's Burning, I don't really have anything to complain about. I'm going to give The Haunted Refrain a perfect 10. But those were just my thoughts. What are yours? Start a conversation in the comments below. And join me next week when we'll be looking at the penultimate story in the Quentin Collins collection. We'll be going from records and music to film and art in The Darkest Shadow. So remember to like, comment, subscribe, click the bell next to subscribe to get notifications when I upload, and in the description box below you will find the link to my Twitter where you can follow me and get updates on the channel. This is Sir Jedi Sentinel, and I'll see you next time.